Karoline Leavitt thought she could insult Jasmine Crockett and move on, but Jasmine's shocking response turned the entire room and country upside down. It was supposed to be a routine panel. Policy talk, a few jabs, maybe a headline or two. The kind of political theater networks love just messy enough to trend, but polished enough to sell ads. They called it Voices of the Future, Bridging the Divide. A one-hour broadcast on a Thursday morning meant to showcase bold voices from both sides of the aisle. But even before the cameras rolled, there was a hum beneath the production attention that didn't fit the tagline. The network teased it all week. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sits down with former White House Assistant Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt for a raw, honest exchange. They pushed clips from past debates. Karoline clashing with cable hosts. Jasmine testifying before Congress. Different energies, different weapons. And the promo made it clear. This wasn't just policy, it was personality. The media knew what they were doing. Pair two sharp women with zero interest in backing down, set a table, hit record. Conflict was the product. But what they didn't count on, what no one in the control room saw coming, was that only one of them came to talk. The other came to expose. Karoline Leavitt came in with her usual fire. She'd made a name for herself by leaning in loud, polished, relentless. A smirk that read like a dare. The kind of guest who cuts off the moderator and calls it conviction. For her, the panel was just another stage. Another clip waiting to go viral. But Jasmine Crockett didn't come to spar. She came to shift something. What was billed as a spirited dialogue was already loaded before the lights even came up. Because this wasn't just red versus blue. It was calm versus calculated. Presence versus performance. And whether the network meant to or not, they had set a trap at not the one they thought. Because the person they expected to be cornered had already read the script. And what was about to unfold wasn't debate. It was dismantling. At 8:39 a.m., the countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2 women sat across from each other. One ready to perform. The other ready to hold a mirror up to the performance. And in 60 seconds, the whole country would be watching. The studio smelled like cold coffee and nerves. Cameras stood like statues. Cords coiled across the floor like veins, everything feeding into the control room. A space built to control the story. But stories don't always cooperate. Jasmine Crockett arrived 20 minutes early. Not for makeup. Not for prep. To sit. To breathe. To feel the room before it tried to shape her. She wore a charcoal blazer. No flash, just precision. A folder tucked under her arm like a second spine. She smiled at the crew, said good morning to the sound tech, asked no questions. She didn't need to. She already had her answers. In the green room, she took the farthest seat from the mirror, opened her folder, reviewed her notes like they were old friends. Calm, still, anchored. Karoline came in 7 minutes later, laughing loud, moving fast, an iced coffee in one hand, a phone in the other. She greeted the crew by name, complimented someone's shoes, and asked if her lighting would be the same as last time. The assistant trailing behind her nodded too quickly. There was no folder, no notes, just confidence, shiny and loud. Jasmine looked up once. Karoline didn't notice, or pretended not to. Backstage, a junior producer whispered just loud enough, "Let's hope Crockett doesn't get too fired up this time." Someone chuckled. Jasmine heard it. Didn't flinch. That's the thing about quiet rooms. They amplify the wrong things. 10 minutes to air. Karoline adjusted her mic. Checked her hair. Asked if they could keep it tight on the introductions. Jasmine stayed seated. No need to adjust what didn't need fixing. Outside the studio, the world was scrolling. Inside, something was building. Not volume. Not drama. Something heavier. 3 minutes to air. Jasmine tapped the folder once. The weight of what sat inside it was enough to shift a narrative if she chose to use it. She wasn't there to burn down the set. She was there to light one match and let the air do the rest. The moderator walked in. "Let's keep it respectful," he said to both. Karoline smiled. Jasmine nodded. They weren't in the same conversation. Not yet. But they would be. The camera light blinked red. They were live. The moderator smiled into the lens, his voice smooth, practiced. "Welcome to Voices of the Future. Today, we're joined by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas and former White House Assistant Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. He barely finished the introduction before Karoline was already leaning in. Well, thank you. And let me just say, because I know the Congresswoman will try to twist this, I'm here to talk facts, Karoline said, cutting the space like it owed her something. She didn't pause. Didn't wait. She launched. Border policy. Inflation. Woke distractions. Every sentence was a jab, gift-wrapped in soundbite-ready confidence. She spoke in absolutes, spun problems like she was solving them, and between each point, she glanced at Jasmine and not to engage, but to dare. Jasmine stayed quiet, watching, measuring, not because she didn't have answers, but because she understood that sometimes silence exposes more than rebuttal. Karoline pivoted often, turned every question into a platform, ignored follow-ups, talked over the moderator twice. It's not complicated, she said, shaking her head. The left keeps playing identity games while the country suffers. The facts don't care about your feelings. It sounded rehearsed. Because it was. What the viewers didn't know yet was how much of Karoline's confidence wasn't rooted in facts. It was strategy. Deflect. Control the tempo. Corner your opponent with a smile. Jasmine uncrossed her legs. Shifted her folder an inch. Didn't speak. Yet, by minute 8, the imbalance was obvious. Karoline had spoken 3 times more than Jasmine. Interrupted twice. Dodged a direct question about healthcare by blaming Democratic fear tactics. The audience watching at home began to shift in their seats. Some noticed the tone. Others noticed the space Jasmine wasn't being given. But most just felt it the weight of a conversation being steered, not shared. And still, Jasmine waited. Because while Karoline filled the air, Jasmine was waiting for something heavier than airtime. She was waiting for the moment the room couldn't unsee what it was enabling. And that moment was getting close. It wasn't just what Karoline said. It was how she said it. The tone. The timing. The tilt of her head when she cut Jasmine off mid-thought. The dismissive wave of her hand when the moderator asked Jasmine to elaborate. The barely concealed smirk when she interrupted again. It all added up. Karoline never raised her voice. She didn't have to. The aggression was layered, quiet, coded, intentional. You know, Congresswoman, people like you are great at moralizing, she said, but the real world doesn't run on feelings. She smiled, almost sweetly, then leaned back in her chair like she'd just done Jasmine a favor. Jasmine turned toward her, slow and steady. She didn't respond, not yet. But her eyes said everything. Karoline adjusted her posture like she was bored. Tapped her pen. Let out an exaggerated sigh when Jasmine started to speak, then jumped in 3 seconds later to correct her. You're twisting my words, she said sharply. But Jasmine hadn't even finished her sentence. This was the kind of disrespect that never gets named. The kind that gets labeled as passion or just part of debate. But it was familiar. Too familiar. Because when black women hold their ground in public, they're told they're overreacting. When they stay calm, they're called cold. When they push back, they're accused of attacking. And Karoline was playing all the cards. Loud confidence. Dismissive language. Smirks and bless your heart, energy disguised as professionalism. The moderator tried to balance the exchange. Let's give Congresswoman Crockett a moment to finish. But Karoline was already talking over the end of that sentence too. At home, the audience could feel it. This wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a performance. And Karoline was treating Jasmine like a prop. Someone to step on, not stand beside. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She just sat there, steady and surgical, because she knew what was happening. This wasn't an argument. It was a setup. A trap woven in tone, timing, and interruption. And Karoline thought she was winning. She didn't know Jasmine had brought something with her that would make the whole room remember what it looks like when a setup becomes a spotlight. The moderator finally turned to Jasmine. Voice tighter now. You could hear I felt the imbalance too. Congresswoman Crockett, he said, do you have a response to that? Jasmine didn't blink, didn't rush. She sat with the question for a full beat longer than the room expected. Then she looked straight ahead. Not at the moderator. Not at Karoline. At the lens. So the audience wouldn't just hear her. They'd feel her. Sure, she said calmly. But before I respond to her opinion, I think we should talk about the real reason she's so loud about mine. It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. Her tone cut sharper than any volume ever could. Karoline stiffened. The moderator tilted his head, and the room, it shifted, because everyone expected a rebuttal. They expected defense, maybe even emotion, but Jasmine wasn't there to defend her existence. She was there to expose the way people tried to undermine it. She adjusted her pen, unfolded her hands, and spoke again. "This isn't just disagreement," she said. "It's design, and I'm done playing along like it's not." Karoline let out a short laugh, the kind you do when you don't know what's coming but sense you're about to lose grip on the script. Jasmine didn't flinch, didn't blink, because this wasn't a pivot. It was a correction, and Jasmine had waited long enough. Everything in the room suddenly felt still. The crew, the moderator, even the cameras. Like they could feel it too. Jasmine was about to shift the conversation, from performance to proof. And once she did, no one at that table would be able to pretend they didn't see it coming. She reached down, calm, deliberate. The Navy folder had been sitting on her lap the entire time, unopened, unbothered, waiting. Jasmine lifted it with care, not like it held secrets, but like it held consequences. She opened it slowly, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and held it up just long enough for the camera to catch a glimpse. "This," she said, voice steady, "is an internal memo from Miss Leavitt's media team, dated 2 weeks ago. Verified, signed off, circulated." She passed it across the table to the moderator. No dramatics, just truth. The room cracked. Not audibly, but you could feel it. Karoline's expression dropped into something between panic and confusion. She glanced at the moderator, then at the paper, then back at Jasmine. "What is this?" she snapped. Jasmine didn't look at her. She looked at the camera. "It outlines a strategy," she said, "targeting minority women in Congress. Not based on policy, but on tone." The moderator scanned the page, his face tightening. Karoline leaned forward, voice rising. "You're lying. This is fake. This is a setup." But Jasmine kept her posture, didn't waver, didn't rise to the bait. "I'm not playing anything," she said. "I'm just reading what your team wrote about people like me. And if that makes you uncomfortable, you should probably ask why it was written in the first place." Silence. Then movement. Karoline fumbled for words. The moderator adjusted his mic. A producer off-camera gestured to cut to break. Too late. The damage was already done. Not by shouting, not by spectacle, by truth delivered in stillness. And in that moment, everyone watching understood. This wasn't a clapback. It was evidence. And Jasmine Crockett had just turned the whole room into a witness. The moderator didn't speak. Not right away. He just stared at the document. 1 page. Black ink. White paper. But it hit like a siren. He read in silence while the cameras kept rolling. Karoline shifted in her seat, eyes darting from the page to Jasmine to the producer behind the lens. She knew what was in it. Or maybe she didn't remember. But it didn't matter now. The page was real, and the room was cracking open. Jasmine waited. She didn't fill the silence. She let it grow, because what was written didn't need help. The memo was a strategy outline, language designed to look professional, but underneath it was a blueprint for erasure. It labeled women like Jasmine high-risk communicators, said they were prone to overreaction and easily framed as combative, suggested triggering tone-based exchanges in public appearances, highlighted the benefits of provoking a defensive response on live air, because it said, audiences distrust what feels emotional. It wasn't about ideas. It was about image. It wasn't about argument. It was about ambush. Karoline's team had written it, approved it, circulated it, and Jasmine had let them bring it into the room so she could hold it up to the light. "You think this is politics?" she said quietly. "This is a playbook. And it's not just about me. It's about anyone who looks like me, speaks like me, leads like me." Karoline tried to cut in. "That document isn't official. I haven't even seen." But the moderator raised a hand. He didn't want more words. He wanted distance. But there was no distance anymore. The truth was now a prop on the table. The mic was still hot. And the audience watching at home, they weren't just hearing a debate anymore. They were watching a strategy unravel. One that wasn't theoretical. One that had been used live, in the first 10 minutes of the panel. And now, for the first time, it was being executed. They saw it for what it was. Not passion, not disagreement. Manufactured disrespect. In a suit and full glam. And Jasmine? She wasn't finished. Karoline's voice rose. Her smile cracked. "This is a setup," she snapped. "You ambushed me with fake outrage." Jasmine turned toward her slowly. Not like she was being dragged into conflict, but like she'd been waiting for that sentence to finish. She leaned in just slightly. "I'm not playing victim," she said. "I'm reading what your team wrote about people like me." The words didn't land like a punch. They landed like a scalpel. Clean. Exact. Irrefutable. Karoline froze. The crew did too. Because that was the line. The one they'd replay. Quote, caption, turn into GIFs. Etch into digital stone. But Jasmine didn't say it like it was meant for headlines. She said it like a woman tired of being told that truth only counts if it comes without emotion, without edge, without context. Karoline tried to recover. "You're twisting this. This is a smear job, and you're good at that. You always make it about race." Jasmine didn't even turn her head. She looked straight at the camera again. If the only way you can win an argument is by provoking someone, then calling them unprofessional when they push back. You were never debating. You were baiting. The moderator shifted. The studio buzzed in his ear. They wanted to cut to commercial, but they didn't. Because even through the static, even through the scrambling, they knew they were witnessing something rare. A takedown made with no shouting, no yelling, no dragged edges. Just a mirror. Held steady. Karoline looked like she wanted to stand, to walk off, to call for someone to reset the script. But it was too late. Because Jasmine had just done something no memo accounted for. She didn't clap back with heat. She clapped back with clarity. And clarity, when spoken without apology, hits harder than any insult ever could. It unraveled fast. Faster than even the producers expected. One moment, Karoline was seated tight smile. Sharp blazer, eyes darting. The next, she was standing. Not in protest. In panic. "You're lying," she snapped. Her voice cracked under the weight of it. "This whole thing, it's fake. You planned this. You ambushed me." She pointed at the document on the table like it had insulted her personally. The moderator leaned back, caught between mediating and disappearing. The crew froze. You could hear a pin drop between camera pans. Jasmine didn't move, didn't blink, didn't reach for her mic or her notes. She just watched Karoline do exactly what the memo said would happen. Trigger tone-based exchange. Frame reaction as unstable. Let the audience connect the dots. And now, Karoline was doing the math for them. "You're manipulating the narrative," she shouted, pacing half a step from her chair. "You always do this. Always making everything about race, about feelings. This isn't about you." But that's what made it worse. She said it like she meant it. Like she believed she was the one being attacked. The one being cornered. The victim. Karoline's face flushed. Her voice climbed higher, words tripping over one another. The producer's voice came through the moderator's earpiece. "Break. Now." But he waited because something was happening. Something raw. Unspinnable. The strategy Karoline's team had drafted was now playing out, live and unfiltered, with the very woman it was designed to discredit sitting silent as it imploded. And the audience, they saw it. Not just on their TVs. Not just in the moment. They saw it because they'd felt it before. In meetings. In classrooms. In every space where someone like Karoline tried to dominate, then cried foul. When control slipped away. Karoline didn't know it, but she wasn't fighting Jasmine. She was fighting the mirror Jasmine had just held up. And she was losing. They cut to commercial late. By then, it didn't matter. The studio lights dimmed. The theme music played. But the mics? They stayed hot just long enough. Karoline ripped off her mic pack. The wire snagged on her blazer. She cursed loud. "This is bull's tea," she hissed, pacing. "She set me up. She knew I couldn't defend that without looking guilty." No one responded. A producer approached tentative, like walking toward a fire with no extinguisher. "Let's cool off a second," they offered. But Karoline wasn't cooling off. She was unraveling. "This always happens when you let them talk too long," she snapped. "Them." The word landed sharp, louder than she realized. The boom mic caught it. The floor cam light was off. But the feed? Still rolling. And someone hit record. By the time the next segment was queued up, a 14-second raw clip had already been clipped and exported. Uploaded. Shared. Sent. First on a private Slack. Then a text thread. Then Twitter. By the next commercial, millions had seen it. Let them talk too long. The words looped. Captioned. Overlaid with Jasmine's calm face across from Karoline's fury. TikToks. GIFs. Threads dissecting the line, the posture, the panic. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a case study, a flashpoint, on how control gets mistaken for composure, how volume gets mistaken for power, and how the moment someone like Jasmine speaks clearly, the room scrambles to contain her. Karoline had tried to regain control. What she did instead was confirm every line of the memo, in real time. And now, the internet wasn't just watching. It was responding. The clip hit Twitter at 9:12 a.m. By 9:17, it had over 0 views. By 9:30, it had its own hashtag. Crockett Clapback. Short, sharp, sticky. Someone posted a side-by-side Jasmine still, and composed on the left, Karoline mid-scream on the right. The caption? One brought receipts, the other brought a meltdown. It was reposted 40 times before lunch. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal. People who'd never heard of either woman were now quoting Jasmine, sharing stories, filling threads with their own moments of being silenced, interrupted, belittled, and told it was just debate. Teachers wrote about being spoken over in staff meetings. Nurses talked about doctors ignoring their concerns. Campaign staffers posted about being told to smile more in donor briefings. Activists shared screenshots of emails where they were labeled too emotional for pushing policy ideas that made someone uncomfortable. And all of it circled back to the moment Jasmine slid the folder across the table, quiet, clean, undeniable. A professor in Atlanta wrote, "This wasn't a clapback. It was a recalibration." She didn't yell. She reframed the room. A 19-year-old organizer from Oakland tweeted, "My whole life they told me I was too much. Jasmine Crockett just showed me what enough actually looks like." The hashtags multiplied. Let her speak. Read the memo. Angry is code. Power doesn't yell. Even journalists who had covered Karoline before began revisiting old interviews, pulling out patterns, moments, tone shifts. And while Karoline's PR team scrambled to draft a statement, Jasmine's name was climbing the trending list. Not for outrage. Not for spectacle. For restraint. Because people weren't cheering the confrontation. They were moved by the clarity. It wasn't the document that broke the internet. It was the silence Jasmine used to frame it. And the world was watching what silence could do, when it's not weakness, but strategy. By noon, every major outlet had reached out. CNN, MSNBC, The New York Times, 5 Sunday shows, 3 podcasts, even 2 fashion blogs. Everyone wanted a quote, a take, a reaction, but Jasmine said nothing. No tweet, no press release, no selfie from the green room. She turned off her phone, took her staff to a quiet lunch, laughed once, then went back to work. Because for her, the moment was already complete. She didn't need to chase it. She didn't need to relive it. She had spoken once, and once was enough. That silence, it said more than any interview ever could. Commentators started noticing. Crockett hasn't said a word since the panel, one anchor observed. That kind of composure, that's not retreat, that's power. The absence became presence. Writers began calling it a masterclass in withholding. PR experts called it the power of pause. One strategist called it the quiet that makes the room echo. Karoline, on the other hand, was everywhere. She issued a statement, then a second one, then went on a conservative talk show and called the memo a hoax. The host interrupted her mid-sentence to ask, "Then why did it work so perfectly?" That clip went viral too. But Jasmine still said nothing. No gloating. No quote tweet. No curated Instagram carousel. Because sometimes the most devastating response is letting the truth sit in silence, long enough for everyone else to hear it. And what they heard wasn't noise. It was a shift. Jasmine wasn't just quiet. She was undisturbed. And that silence? It wasn't absence. It was control. It didn't take long. Just 2 days after the memo went viral, the whispers became names. Then the names started speaking. The first was Anana Musa, former junior aide who left Karoline Leavitt's campaign last fall. They gave a statement to The Intercept, short and devastating. Yes, the memo's real. And no, it wasn't a one-off. The second came less quietly. Megan Ruiz, former digital comms strategist. She tweeted a screenshot. The original memo, with the subject line clear as day. Messaging guidance. High risk Democratic voices. Draft approved. Attached was Karoline's reply. Looks sharp. Let's run it. That tweet alone hit 2 million views in 24 hours. Megan didn't stop there. She wrote a full thread. We were trained to watch for emotional cues and flag them in real time. We were told if you make them defend their tone, you don't have to debate their ideas. This wasn't just about Congresswoman Crockett. It was a tactic, and it worked until it didn't. That was the match. Within hours, more staffers, former interns, volunteers, junior consultants started sharing stories. They'd seen similar language, been on the same calls, heard the same phrases. She's too reactive. Play the identity card last so it lands as desperation. Get under her skin, then call her unstable. It was no longer about one memo. It was a pattern. Written, practiced, executed. The media shifted overnight. The tone turned serious. Headlines no longer said alleged. They said confirmed. They said coordinated. They said weaponized. And suddenly, what Karoline Leavitt's team had tried to keep behind closed doors was now the center of a national reckoning. Not because Jasmine Crockett shouted, but because she held up the mirror and let the reflection speak for itself. Once the memo was confirmed, the conversation couldn't go back to normal, because normal was the problem. Morning shows stopped asking, did Jasmine overreact? And started asking, why are black women always the ones being told to calm down? Panelists on cable news revisited past clips, interruptions during debates, mockery of tone, the constant rebranding of clarity as combativeness. A New York Times editorial ran with the headline, "The Strategy of Silencing." It asked a new question. How many campaigns have this playbook, and how long have we let them get away with it? Journalists dug deeper, found similar language in internal docs from other races. Congressional campaigns, Senate runs, even city councils. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Karoline. It was about the system. Political strategists went quiet. Then some started speaking. A longtime Democratic consultant confessed, we've all seen versions of that memo. Some of us have used them. And yes, it's always about tone. Because if you control how someone's heard, you don't have to deal with what they're saying. Law students began dissecting the moment in comms theory classes. Sociologists wrote essays on it. Therapists posted breakdowns of emotional manipulation and projection. It wasn't about one document anymore. It was about the cultural fluency of silencing women, especially black women, through performance critique. By turning presence into a problem, passion into provocation, poise into threat. And Jasmine? She didn't jump into every headline. She didn't brand the moment. She just kept showing up. One interview, one live stream, one reminder. This isn't new. You just finally saw it happen in real time. The rules weren't broken. They were finally exposed. And no one could pretend they hadn't seen the script now. It dropped like a PR band-aid. 1 minute it wasn't there. The next, it was plastered across every platform. Karoline Leavitt addresses recent controversy in apology video. But it wasn't an apology. Not really. A neutral background. Soft lighting. A carefully chosen blazer. Eyes just glossy enough to suggest sincerity, but not enough to look like she'd actually felt it. I want to take a moment to speak directly to the American people, she began. Already too polished. Already too late. She blamed stress. Said the panel had been high pressure. Said certain interactions were misinterpreted. Said she regrets how things unfolded. Not what she said. How things unfolded. The memo? She called it unauthorized. Claimed she had no prior knowledge of its circulation. That it does not reflect the tone or values of her campaign. She never said Jasmine's name. Not once. She never said sorry. Not once. The video was 2 minutes long, and every second of it was measured. Rehearsed. Empty. Comments were disabled. Likes were hidden. The caption just said, "Let's move forward." But people weren't ready to move. Because the apology wasn't a reckoning, it was damage control. And the internet knew it. Too vague to be real. Too clean to be honest. You don't get to lie in high definition. One creator stitched the apology with the now iconic clip of Jasmine sliding the folder across the table. Caption: "You're not sorry, you're exposed." Another tweet got over 600, 0 likes. It's wild how someone can lose an argument, a mic, and the benefit of the doubt all in one sitting. Karoline had re-entered the conversation, but she wasn't leading it anymore. Because no video can clean up what was already made clear. She didn't lose the room when the memo came out. She lost it when she tried to rewrite the ending, like we hadn't already seen the whole story unfold. No press conference, no exclusive, no viral thread, just a quiet live stream. Jasmine Crockett, seated in her home office. No filters, no talking points, just her and a camera, on her own time. She logged on at 2 p.m. CST. Over 90, 0 tuned in within the first 10 minutes. She looked rested, centered, unbothered. She greeted the chat with a soft smile. "Hey y'all, let's talk." And she did. Not about Karoline. Not about the memo. About what it all meant. "I didn't bring that folder out to embarrass anybody," she said. "I brought it out because some things aren't up for debate anymore." She didn't name names. Didn't swing back. She didn't need to. She talked about grace. About preparation. About what it means to speak clearly in a room that's been designed to mishear you. She took questions from the chat. One asked, "How did you stay so calm?" Jasmine paused, then answered slowly, "Because I wasn't trying to win the room. I was trying to make space in it." Another asked, "What's next?" She smiled. "More of the same," she said. "Showing up, staying ready, and not shrinking." Then she looked straight into the lens. Truth doesn't need volume. It just needs space. And in that moment, with no stage, no applause, no opponent yelling back, she delivered the most powerful statement of the entire week. Not a clapback, a compass. Because while everyone else was chasing the moment, Jasmine had already moved forward. On her terms, in her voice. No spin, just clarity. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. Not just on social media, not just in group chats, but in classrooms, in boardrooms, on front pages and under highlighters. Crockett Vive. The playbook became the headline of a viral think piece in The Atlantic. A masterclass in holding space without raising your voice ran in the cut. Law journals started quoting her in media ethics essays. Sunday sermons even wove her into messages about dignity and power. College professors rewrote their syllabi overnight. Debate coaches paused their drills to talk about the difference between performance and presence. And in one high school in Newark, an English teacher asked her students to annotate Jasmine's livestream like literature. She didn't clap back, one student wrote. She held a mirror and then didn't apologize for the reflection. In Houston, a group of young black women launched a campus campaign called Just Let Us Speak, using Jasmine's face on flyers with bold white letters across the top. Truth doesn't need volume. Cable news tried to reduce it again. Some called it a viral spat. Others labeled it a cultural flashpoint. But neither was quite right. Because Jasmine Crockett wasn't just trending anymore. She was teaching something. By doing nothing extra. By refusing to shrink. By showing, in real time, that poise is not passivity. It's power under pressure. And people saw themselves in that. Every woman who'd been told to calm down. Every student who'd been called too sensitive. Every professional whose tone was policed before their ideas were heard. They weren't just reposting the clip. They were re-examining how they've been read their whole lives. The reckoning wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was steady and honest and long overdue. Her name was Dana Haskins, 27, graduate of a mid-tier political science program. First job out of school, junior communications aide for Caroline Leavitt's campaign, until she walked away and blew the whole thing open. On a quiet Tuesday, ProPublica published the headline, "I leaked the memo, one woman's decision to expose the strategy behind the silence." It was her, the anonymous sender, The one who emailed Jasmine the document. No subject line. No signature. Just the truth. She hadn't spoken until now. In the interview, Dana was clear. Shaky voice, but firm in her choice. I couldn't watch it happen again, she said. Watching Jasmine Crockett get painted into a corner, and then blamed for reacting to it. I'd seen it rehearsed behind closed doors. She talked about the meetings, the messaging sessions, the slide deck titled Framing Flipping, and how none of it felt like politics. It felt like gaslighting scaled and funded. I knew they'd call it fake, Dana said. That's why I included the signatures, the timestamps. I knew they'd try to spin it, so I made sure they couldn't. When asked if she feared retaliation, she paused. Of course, she said, but I was more afraid of staying quiet, because the moment I saw that memo, I saw every meeting I've been in where a woman got called emotional just for defending her point. I saw myself. Dana didn't ask for attention. She asked for change. Her closing line? I didn't leak it to hurt a campaign. I leaked it because I was tired of pretending. This kind of silencing wasn't scripted. And just like that, the story deepened. Because Jasmine may have read the memo aloud, but Dana made sure the world had no choice but to listen. The town hall was quiet. Not in energy, just in intention. No flashing cameras. No cable vans parked outside. Just a folding table, 2 microphones, and about 60 chairs in a rec center just off the freeway in Tyler, Texas. Jasmine Crockett walked in wearing flats and no entourage. She greeted the organizers by name, smiled at the man adjusting the mic, then sat down like she always did, present, not performative. The room was filled with people who didn't need to be convinced. They came not for spectacle, but for something else. Recognition, connection, closure. During the Q&A, a middle school teacher stood up. She clutched a spiral notebook and spoke softly into the mic. I just want to say, I've taught debate for 17 years, she said. And what you did last week, that wasn't just strength. It was strategy. You didn't fight back, you reframed the fight. Jasmine nodded slowly, taking the words in. Then, a studenta 16-year-old named Zaria walked to the mic, nerves shaking her voice. When I saw that clip, I sent it to my mom, she said. I said, look, she looks like us. And they tried to talk over her, but she didn't move. She looked up at Jasmine. You made me feel like I could do this too. Whatever this is. There was quiet applause. Soft, sincere. Last was an older man with silver hair and a denim jacket. He didn't give his name. Just looked Jasmine in the eye and said, I've lived a long time, seen a lot of yelling on TV, but I've never seen stillness hit that hard. That's what it was. Not about going viral. Not about silencing anyone else. It was about what happens when someone refuses to shrink. And suddenly, people who've been made to feel small see something bigger inside themselves. Jasmine didn't leave with headlines that night. She left with something quieter, but heavier. The knowledge that what she carried had reached beyond the moment. And into people, it would have been easy to let it be a clip, a clapback, a meme with looping audio and bold font over her face. I'm not playing victim. Truth doesn't need volume. Let the memo speak. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't built for easy. And this story wasn't made to stop trending, it was made to last. Because what she did that day wasn't just interrupt a strategy. She interrupted a cycle, of voices being trimmed for tone, of anger being pathologized, of brilliance being mistaken for attitude, just because it didn't come with apology. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She didn't spike the mic. She held the room. She held her ground. And in doing so, she raised the bar. For every girl who's been told to watch her tone, for every woman who's felt the need to rehearse calm just to be heard, for every person who's ever been asked to make their truth more palatable so someone else could stay comfortable, Jasmine rewrote the rules. She showed that power isn't about out-talking someone. It's about outlasting the noise, staying rooted, staying whole. And now, classrooms are quoting her. Campaigns are studying her. Young women are whispering her lines to themselves in bathroom mirrors before job interviews. She didn't just clap back. She shifted the culture, not by being louder, but by refusing to be small. And the legacy? It's not just in what she said. It's in what came next. The conversations, the rethinking, The quiet that followed, not because people ran out of things to say, but because they finally started listening. So if you're looking for the lesson in this story, it's simple. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to twist to fit the room. And you never, ever have to apologize for showing up as the clearest, fullest version of yourself. That's not defiance. That's leadership. And Jasmine Crockett didn't just model it. She made it undeniable. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.